Hi. Hello. Hey. Good afternoon. My name is David Chambers, and I'm a management major graduating in 2009. Our sponsor for this afternoon's Impact session is the Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, and our live webcasting partner is Impact Media Solutions. Our media partner is WABE 90.1 FM. Before we introduce today's speaker, I'd like to give a special welcome to our guests in the front row, who have been accepted to Georgia Tech's College of Management for fall 2009. Not only are they the best and brightest of the fall 2009 admitted class, but they are rising leaders. We hope that they join us and become leaders at Georgia Tech. Have you ever wondered how CEOs and other executives learn the art of leadership? Today's speaker has helped train hundreds of executives to reach higher levels of excellence. Our guest today is Mr. Andy Fleming, founder of Core Growth Partners. Core Growth Partners is a management consulting firm specializing in providing practical help, laying out clear paths, helping individuals and organizations grow, and deepening the connection between values and ideals. Clients include Chik-Fil-a, John Wieland Homes and Neighborhoods, Emory University, Synovus, AGL Resources, and our own Georgia Tech. Mr. Fleming received his undergraduate degree from Yale University, where he majored in economics. He also won the Stan Smith Senior Award for Outstanding Contribution by a graduating senior. His graduate work includes an MBA from Harvard Business School and study at Emory's Candler School of Theology. With over 20 years of corporate and consulting experience, he brings unique insight, ability, commitment to helping individuals and organizations flourish. Mr. Fleming has also authored 2 books, Getting Ahead Without Losing Heart and Backing Down the Ladder. Please give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to our guest, Mr. Andy Fleming.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm glad to be here this afternoon and to have an opportunity to share some thoughts with you about career, life choices, and some perspectives that I may have gained along the way, both from my own experience, but also sharing some perspectives that I've learned by both researching, observing, and coaching other folks as well. I'm going to get to that in just a minute. 2 things first, though. I want to thank Terry Blum and Bob Thomas from the Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for making this possible, and they're good friends, and it's just good to be in their company again. I also, the other thing I need to do is that I have found that typically when I do a workshop, particularly when I stand up to do a workshop, that there are 3 questions that I get asked again and again and again. And so, anybody here seen the game show Jeopardy? Do you know that? Jeopardy, where they give you the answers and you have to guess the questions? Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of that here. So here's the first answer that I'm going to give you, and that is 6 feet 8 inches. What is and you put it in the form of a question, too. This is very sharp here. Very good. Okay, so yeah. The second answer is, yes, I did. Oh, baby. Okay. Late afternoon, yep, I played basketball. And so I played at Yale University, that basketball powerhouse of the Northeast. We actually do have one thing in common with one of the powerhouses in the Southeast. With Duke, actually, we have the same number of letters in our name. And so here's bonus round here. Final Jeopardy, the bonus round. Too slow and don't jump that well. How'd you do? Yeah, it's always some version of why are you here? Okay, why didn't you play professional basketball in some form or fashion? Well, the short answer is that I actually did, and I guess you could count it as professional basketball. I played in Reykjavik, Iceland, of all places. So I was a player coach for the sports club of Reykjavik for one season after college. And afterwards, if anybody wants to hear, there's the Final Four and all that stuff, but I could tell you stories about Icelandic basketball that, well, you can ask me afterwards, actually. So I've also noticed one other thing about this workshop. And having done this workshop a bunch of times, I'm going to attend to that now. And I have found that this workshop actually goes a lot better with these famous Amos chocolate chip cookies. So I have a lot of bags of these here. And I'm going to start some here and some over here and some over here. Yeah, I got the thumbs up here. I got to go back over to this side for one more. Okay. All right, all right. Now, I've actually, I know I'm in an predominantly engineering school. I've done the math on this. And so if you don't get a cookie, okay, we've got an ethical issue happening in this crowd. Okay, so the math should work out here. And I actually have a request for you that unless you have a dietary reason or some other reason for not having a cookie, I actually would encourage you to have at least one. And the reason why I'm going to get to a little bit later on in our time together. Okay, so have at least one of these chocolate chippers here. Let me say a word about my intentions for our time together. We're talking about purpose this afternoon, and so here's my purpose for the next stretch of time here. And that's to share with you my perspective, okay, based on my own experience, observations, research, but to share with you my perspective on how to make career and life choices in a satisfying way. How to make career and life choices with integrity and passion. Okay? And I don't know if that's a topic that might be of some interest for some. I hope so. I'm actually delighted to have Bob and Terry told me that there were prospective students coming here, and so I'm delighted that you're here. And glad to share some of these ideas with you, and I hope you find them helpful as you kind of start on the college journey. And the way I want to do this, the way I want to get into this is by sharing some of my own story. So I want to give you a little bit more history in addition to the Iceland adventure. And it'll give you some context for how I came to some of these perspectives and ideas. I did through my own mistakes, my own twists and turns, my own screw-ups. So it's a kind of hard-earned experience, and I want to share some of that with you. And then I want to share with you, toward the end, I want to offer you a framework, a way to hold, potentially, some of these ideas and concepts together so that they could potentially be of value to you going forward, so that there could be a takeaway for you in addition to the cookies. So the place for me to start in terms of sharing some of my own history, and I'm going to kind of start right in the middle of the story in one sense, and then I'm going to go a little bit backwards and then forwards from there. So the place for me to start is actually by holding up another prop here. This is maybe the only box of cheer power pouches that exists outside of a vault in Cincinnati, where the headquarters of Procter Gamble is, where I worked. So cheer power pouches. So I was a newly minted MBA student from Harvard and had gone off to Procter Gamble thinking that I was going to climb the corporate ladder, sort of take on the world, as it were. And excited about consumer products marketing, and if you're interested in consumer products marketing, P&G was and still is a great place to be. So I was on this project that was a test market brand. So Cheer Power Pouches was detergent that came in a little pouch that you tossed in the washer. The pouch theoretically dissolved, okay? Releasing the super concentrated detergent that would get your clothes clean in all temperatures, okay? you know, all temperature, that deal, hot, warm, cold, okay? So as I like to say, neither this brand nor I made it out of test market, okay? What they discovered in the test market, which ironically happened to be here in Atlanta, what they discovered was that in cold water, which is a problem for all temperature, in cold water, that pouch didn't dissolve fully. And so you might wind up with a blue sort of paste thing on your shirt. And what I discovered was that I wasn't a good fit for this particular environment. That being in a large bureaucratic organization was one of the reasons why I wound up leaving. There were a couple others. Another one was more kind of idiosyncratic reasons in terms of the particular situation that I was in and people around me. That was a second reason. I'm not going to go into that here. But the third one was I wasn't really prepared. I wasn't prepared kind of emotionally, psychologically for the intensity of this particular workplace. And so I hit a wall. I was doing well, was well regarded by the folks there, but I hit a wall. And it was a real kind of existential crisis for me in my life. So I had kind of tooled along, going from sort of falling onto the fast track, if you will. And now I'm at a place that I don't want to be. I've got a lot of debt from having paid for business school. And I'm really depressed. And I'm depressed about three things. Depressed about the fact that I don't like what I'm doing every day. Okay? I'm depressed about the fact that I realize I actually chose to do this. Okay? I could have done other things. I had a ticket that would get me into other places or into other games. And to realize that, gee, I actually chose this was depressing to me. But the thing that was actually the scariest thing for me, and was really kind of a jumping off point for me, was that I didn't have a way to make the next choice. I didn't have a set of criteria that could help me make a choice. I came to realize that not only was the picture that I had, this vision that I had, sort of now turned to ashes for me, but I came to realize that the approach that I'd taken to making that choice, okay, which was largely an approach driven by what's the most prestigious place to go? What's a place that would earn me credits, in a sense, from my dad, from other people who knew me? What would look good? What would sort of be the place that would keep my options open? All those kind of rationales that we all have at one time or another for making choices, that approach was now bankrupt for me. I had opportunities to sort of switch lanes of the fast track and go work for other companies in similar businesses, and could have done that fairly easily. But I began to sort of know in my heart that that just wasn't the place for me. But I didn't have a way to make the next choice. And so I'm gonna leave it right there for a second, and I'm gonna go backwards and then forwards and pick up that story again. So I grew up in the Northeast in Connecticut. My parents were Depression-era kids. My dad, who worked for the same company for 30 years, kind of bootstrapped his way up the corporate ladder. And what they provided for me and my three siblings in terms of educational opportunities was just astounding. Starting with the fact that we happened to grow up across the street from a pretty prestigious private school in Connecticut called Choate. And for various circumstances, we kind of fell into going there. And I don't know how my dad did it. I really don't. And my parents together, how they saved the money for us to do it. But all of us went through Choate all 4 years. And then 3 of us went to Ivy League schools, and my sister went to a great college in Pennsylvania. I really don't know how they did it. But I want to tell you this story about my dad and about his experience at work. And as I say, he did well. He had sort of bootstrapped his way up to a position as a plant manager for a local plant. But when he hit the door at the end of the day at 6 o'clock, and if you had any of my siblings here, they would tell you the same story. We would all ask him, "So, Dad, how was work today?" And invariably, there was a one-word answer that came back. And it came back with a kind of a smile. Okay, so it became almost kind of a joke, but it wasn't all joke. And so, "Dad, how was work today?" "Rotten." Okay, that was it. Okay, that was end of conversation about it. Now, there were things about his work that he liked. Okay, there were challenges that engaged him. I knew that. But there was an element to his experience that sort of made its way into my consciousness that didn't become something that I really kind of acted on or acted from until later. But that seed was there. So a second story that I want to give you is that when I was 13 years old, I was playing ping pong in the basement with some buddies of mine. And we were talking about what we're going to do with our lives. And this was going to prep school and so forth. And guys said different things that I was playing with. And I said, "You know, all I want to do," I was into sports big time back then. I said, "All I want to do is I want to be a teacher and a coach. That's it. That's all I want to do. I'm going to go to the public school. I'm going to go to the University of Connecticut, whose basketball team's gotten a lot better since I was there. We actually beat them once at Yale. But I was going to go to the University of Connecticut and be a teacher and a coach, probably high school, teacher and coach." Okay? And then I sort of fell into this other track, and that thought just kind of went away. Okay? So I want to just plant that seed there. And I fell into it for, silly, idiosyncratic reasons, no big sort of sense of mission or purpose. But once you start sort of down that path and you're in a certain culture environment, that starts to influence your thinking, and it did mine. So I went to Yale, played basketball there, got to actually be captain of the basketball team. We had a decent team. Majored in economics, was really in the mode, though, of keeping my options open. It wasn't something I was particularly passionate about. If I had to do it all over again, I'd major in English literature and write more poetry and read more poetry. Went off to play basketball at Iceland, came back and worked for 3 years in the corporate world in human resources. That was an area that my dad had started out in, so I started out along that path. Had some great experiences doing that, got to hire 600 people at a plant startup, and so got really grounded in a sense of the workplace and so forth in ways that I didn't realize until later. But then my older brother had graduated from college, and he went off and worked for a few years, and then he went to Wharton, got his MBA. And I thought, wow, I guess that's what you do. He was working for a big consulting firm. He was making good bucks. And I thought, well, that's what you do. You work for a few years and go get your MBA and then trot off to some other company and you're on your way. And so that's what I did. And so that leads us through Harvard Business School back to P&G. And so there I am at P&G, and I'm really stuck. And I start to get this idea that I'm not the only one who feels this way. This was 1986, 1987. This was sort of right in the middle, actually, of the yuppie era, if those of you have heard of it, that there were billboards around Harvard Business School that said, "Park your BMW here," okay, for condominiums there. This was when Donald Trump, believe it or not, was actually an icon before he became a joke, and now he lives in some weird celebrity space, I'm not sure, okay? But this was the era, okay? And I had the sense that I wasn't alone. And so I had the bright idea that I think in some ways is a very American thing to do, that if you don't know much about a particular subject, you go write a book about it. So I decided that I was going to go out and interview people in their late 20s, early 30s, who either at one point or another had been on the fast track, either in school or in their work life. And I was going to ask them questions about how they thought about it now, what was their perspective now, hoping that that experience would help me better understand myself and kind of give me some sense of direction. And I can tell you, to make a long story short, over a period of time, it really did. So it was a very intensely introspective period of time to write this book, and quite an adventure to do it. And it's now out there. It exists still. It's called Getting Ahead Without Losing Heart is the name of it, if anybody's interested in it. And it tells you some more of the stories that went on for me, and also tells you some stories of other folks that you might find interesting and compelling. But in the midst of doing this writing, what I began to realize and to sort of hone back in on was that, God, I really love being a teacher and a coach. I kind of rediscovered that for myself. And fortunately for me, I discovered that during this period of time, a lot of companies were starting to create corporate universities. So there were opportunities to become an instructor and developer of programs for corporations. And I jumped on it. And I was very fortunate. I worked my way into a position with Aetna up in Hartford, where I was a lead facilitator and instructor and developer for leadership programs there. And I got to apprentice with some really world-class kind of folks. And I loved it. And so that track started to play out well for me. But simultaneously, because I'd started asking some bigger questions for myself, that I began to develop what has come to be a deeper sense of purpose. I began to see that not only had my dad had struggles in the workplace, I had, and as my eyes were open now, I began to see that there were lots of people for whom the primary way that they spent their time, the place that they spent more time than any other, was a really unsatisfying kind of experience. And I began to get a sense that, God, it doesn't have to be this way. It really ought not to be this way. And so I began asking myself some deeper questions about sort of purpose and meaning and so forth. And I decided that I was going to pursue those questions. I decided that I was going to, in a sense, not only fly in somebody else's plane, but I was going to grab controls of my own plane and fly it. And so what I decided to do was to actually leave the corporate world and come to seminary, because that's a place where I thought that I could explore these questions around meaning and purpose in a richer way. And I had a mentor who had encouraged and supported me in doing that. So what brought me down to Atlanta in 1993 was to go to the Candler School of Theology. I came to the School of Theology now with a very clear sense of purpose. Okay? And it's still the purpose that animates what I do and what our business does. And it's embodied in a question. And that is, how do you help people integrate their faith, broadly speaking, not necessarily religious faith, but their centers of meaning and value? How do you help people integrate their faith and their work? How do you help people integrate more of who they are with what they do? And that had been a real live question for me. I couldn't have articulated it that way, but that was my struggle, was that I wanted to integrate who I was with what I did. And I wanted to do that more than just during my off hours. I wanted to do that at the center of my life. And so I came down to seminary to explore that question. And here's where things start to happen. I'm in a class at seminary, and I'm 2 weeks into seminary. And so registration period is over. The classes are already set. But we had a professor who, bless his heart, put us in small groups in the class and told us to everybody in this small group, 4 people, gets to share your story and to say why you're at seminary. Okay, so everybody got like half an hour to tell their story, and that was the whole class period. And so I'm in this little group of 4 people, and by now I could articulate it, just as I did a minute ago. I said, the reason I'm at seminary is because I want to learn how to help people integrate their faith and their work, how to help people integrate more of who they are with what they do. And I was single at the time. And this very attractive woman on my right looks at me, okay? And she says, what are you doing on Tuesday nights? And I said, well, I'm open. Do you have any, what do you have in mind? And she said, you don't have a choice. And this, this was really getting good, I thought, okay? You don't have a choice. And she said, there's a class that meets on Tuesday nights. It's taught by a professor named Jim Fowler. And you have to take this class. Because Professor Fowler has wrote about, thought about, and explored deeply, and now teaches about the very question that you're interested in. Okay? And I have to acknowledge, this was 1993, I have to acknowledge just briefly, Jim Fowler's here. He's my good friend and has been my teacher, my mentor, my boss, and ongoing friend. And Jim, just wave your hand to folks. So I started reading Jim Fowler's books, okay, that weekend before the class. And I showed up at his class on Tuesday night, and he graciously let me into the class. And I got lit up. I got lit up by the stuff. And in one of the handouts that we're going to give you afterwards, there's a couple of Jim's books that are mentioned there. But I got lit up. In particular, I remember reading a quote, okay? I remember reading a quote that Jim quoted in one of his books from a theologian by the name of Frederick Buechner that I had read in my various stuff before seminary. And when I saw Jim was quoting this, and then Jim was doing something with it, okay, integrating into a larger sort of picture, I go, man, this is it for me. And so the quote has to do with vocation, and the idea that the place to which you are called, the place to which any of us is called, is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. And I go, man, oh man, that's it. If I can get some traction in terms of how to figure that out further for myself, but also for other folks, that's what I want to do. So I took every class I could with Jim. And about a year into it, Jim became head of something called the Center for Ethics at Emory. And I remember sitting in his office one day, and Jim looked at me and said, I am going to take that job, and I'd like you to come work with me. I go, my God, what could be better? So I worked at the Center for Ethics for 5 years. Jim had said, I envision you giving workshops around campus, undergraduates, graduate students. Other than that, you'll have to make it up. Beautiful. Let's go. So we did that. And we created some stuff, and we created some, I think, some innovative things. And in the midst of doing that, so here's where it starts to go again. Okay? In the midst of doing that, we actually got word that someone in Columbus, Georgia, a guy by the name of Bill Turner, was interested in providing some additional money to support programs around servant leadership, leadership concept called servant leadership. And we looked at what we did at the Ethics Center and saw, gee, this fits. Okay, we're about this kind of thing. We ought to go down to Columbus, meet Bill Turner, and see if we could convince him to support our programs. And so we did. And as part of that, I wound up doing a workshop, a little mini workshop for Bill Turner and some people there at a company called Synovus, where Bill had been the chairman of the board previously. And they liked what I did. I was doing stuff that we were doing at the Ethics Center. They liked what I did. And they said, we'd like to have you help us develop our leadership institute, our corporate leadership institute. And I helped them do that. And then they wanted to have me teach in it. And I did that. And I eventually had to do that full time because it was such an incredible commitment and incredible opportunity. And while I was doing that, Synovus got named on the Fortune magazine Best Company to Work For list, got named #1 Best Company to Work For in America. And so people started calling Synovus saying, who does your leadership training? You must do some leadership training, and I got referrals, and I had a business. Okay. And so one of the things that I've gotten clear on for myself that I offer to you, in addition to a framework I'll offer later, is that it really helps to be able to articulate your own purpose in life. It really helps to have something that you're on fire about, that you're really committed to, and to be able to give voice to it. One of the writers that I like, a guy by the name of David White, again, one of his books will be listed on the resource list, talks about that we shape our sense of identity and vocation in conversation. Okay? That we shape our sense of identity and vocation in conversation with the world around us. So it's actually a conversation between what's inside of us, what's most true for us, and also what the world around us needs. And it's not that the world around us doesn't care about us, okay? But until we get a little bit more of a sense of what actually is important to us and what we want to offer out to the world, it's not that the world doesn't care about us, it's that it can't hear us. It doesn't know where we are. But when you start to be able to articulate your own sense of purpose, okay, your own sense of mission, then the world can start to hear you, and things can start to happen. Okay? And I offer my own story around that. And the story doesn't end with the Synovus piece. That through various circumstances, I joined a leadership development community where I was a participant. And stuff happens. I'm interested in this. I'm trying to become better at teaching others to be a leader. And so in this community, I actually meet two people. One is a retired consultant who has a body of work that when he starts to show me, I start to look at it and I go, my God, this is really interesting. And it's grounded in constructive developmental psychology, which is what Jim Fowler had written about and integrated into ideas around faith and vocation. And I go to this guy, his name is Len Liritz. I say, do you realize I work for Jim Fowler? And he goes, yeah, I read an article by Jim Fowler 30 years ago, and I've integrated it into my own thinking. And he's now wielded into the corporate world. I go, my God, unbelievable. Of all the people I could have apprenticed with to learn how to be a better coach. So I was a workshop guy, standing up, doing workshops. I'm a ham. All that stuff is true. I like standing up here. I like doing this. But I've begun to realize that if you really want to impact people, there's deeper ways to do that. And one of the potential ways is through more individual coaching. And so now I encounter Len Liritz, and I learn a whole model for doing deep-level coaching for folks. That is really how I made my living for 5 or 6 years. Okay? And that plays out for a time. Okay? And then after I've started doing a lot of coaching, and coaching senior executives and coaching high potentials in organizations, I begin to realize that, man, if you really want to have impact, okay, if you really want to have impact in the line of work that I'm in, you've not only got to do individual coaching, okay, where you can go deep with people, but you've also got to impact the culture as well. Because if you light somebody up or get somebody fired up or turned on, and they go back into a culture that's not receptive to that, what have you really accomplished? Okay? Maybe some of them will break through, maybe, and I've seen that happen, and that's great. I'm glad for that. But if you really want to have impact, you've got to touch both individuals and the culture. And so I started to work out how to do that. And along that time, I was coaching a guy who was graduating from Emory's business school. Sorry to mention that here at a Georgia Tech audience. He's really a good guy, actually. You'd like him, seriously. Okay. His name is Brandon Smith. And as part of an ongoing program I do there of coaching folks, I met Brandon. And I came to discover that Brandon had a plan for his life. And it involved some of the things that I was interested in. So he had gotten a master's in counseling. It which is a great background for a part of what I do. But then he'd also worked for 4 or 5 years as a trainer and workshop guy and organizational consultant, and then he got his MBA. I said, so Brandon, given that story, that background, what are you interested in doing? He goes, I'd like to do exactly what you're doing. I go, well, okay. And so we've created this firm that has a methodology for doing individual coaching with senior executives, but also working on the culture as well, and trying to help the organization figure out who it is as an organization. Okay? So to help the organization integrate who it is with what it does. And we have some methodologies and approaches to that. And I'm going to give you just one story around that that might be of interest to folks, particular of interest to folks here at Georgia Tech. It's actually, one of our clients is a rocket science company. And they're based in Huntsville, Alabama, where there's a lot of rocket science firms that work with Department of Defense and NASA. And they're about a 700-person firm, privately held, was started originally by a PhD woman, Chinese woman, who'd come over from Taiwan, who was in her mid-50s when she started the company. Fascinating story. The company's called ERC, is the name of it, in Huntsville. Now it's being run by her son. They're about 700 folks. And we did our process with these folks. And the guy who's the CEO, a guy named Ernie Wu is his name, just terrific guy and very capable and good folks there. And we kind of helped them think about kind of who they were and what they wanted to be about, and helped Ernie think about and other senior managers think about who they were as individuals and how they wanted to integrate their own values with the organization. And I'll save you a lot of the details and all the story around that. But I can tell you, we had an event a couple of weeks ago, or experience a couple of weeks ago, where I was there doing some coaching at their new corporate headquarters. They've grown quite a bit. And they've established a larger purpose for their organization. And their larger purpose for their organization is enhancing the life of their employees and their employees' families. That's their purpose. Okay? They have a set of values that relate to how they deal with both their employees and their customers, but they're really focused on creating a great place for their employees. And so I'm sitting there doing some coaching last week in what they call the children's room, in one of their conference rooms. And around the wall are pictures of children of the employees from around the country in that conference room. And then I met with Ernie a little bit later in something called the family room, which is their executive conference room. And around the wall are pictures of employees' families with the employee themselves. And Ernie tells me that when they have a big decision to make and they're sitting in the boardroom, that one of the things they do is they look up at the pictures and ask themselves, well, how is this going to impact the folks who are represented here? Okay. So, a big moment for me personally to see that happening. It also leads me to think about, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if some of the folks who are making corporate decisions over the last few years had been sitting in family rooms and children's rooms while they were doing that as well. I would invite you to be thoughtful about that going forward. One of the other things I neglected to mention, I started to, but I got wound up here, is that in this leadership development community where I met Len Liritz, I also met my wife, who was interested in leadership development, personal growth. And so it was a pretty good bargain for me, sort of love and work out of the same sort of deal. But that's what kind of happens, I think, or is more likely to happen when you're kind of walking down your path. And it's your path. It's not somebody else's path. It's your path. Okay? So I want to share with you, for a couple of minutes, I want to share with you a framework based on the book that I wrote, the coaching that I've done, my own experiences that relates to career and life choices. And then we'll take some questions and answers and finish up with a couple other things. Broadly speaking, as I started to get interested in this topic, I started to see two camps of people. And this is going to oversimplify it, but for the purposes of this illustration, I think it'll be helpful. So I started to see two camps of people. One camp of people who are more fired up, more fulfilled, more satisfied with what they're doing, maybe even contributing more in their organization or in their domain. The other camp of people, less fired up, less fulfilled, okay? Not as excited about what they're doing, maybe not contributing as much or in as a sustained way. And I started to ask myself, so what is the difference? How do you get in one camp versus the other camp? And I've come to believe and had reinforced that the folks in the more fired up, more fulfilled side, in one form or another, are asking themselves three basic questions again and again and again. And I want to share those questions and put them in a little picture here with the idea that perhaps they'd be something for you to sort of take away and reflect on. So the questions, in a sense, they're simple. Simple, but it's not simplistic. To really live it out, to really play it out, will actually take all the courage and all the heart that you can muster. Okay? But here's the three questions. So the first question that I've seen people who seem to be more fired up, more fulfilled, more satisfied, were asking themselves is, what is it that I love doing? What is it that when I'm doing it, time goes by quickly? God, 2 hours. Where did the time go? Okay, what is it that when I'm doing it, I actually get energy from it? At least some of the time, it actually feels more like play than it does work. Okay, what is it that if I know I'm going to be doing that during the day, it doesn't hurt as bad to get out of bed in the morning? Okay? So what is it that I love doing? The second question, I've seen people who more fired up, more fulfilled, et cetera, were asking themselves in one form or another is, in addition to what is it that I love doing, it's what is it that I'm good at doing? What is it that I seem to have a knack for? What is it that I seem to be able to pick up on? Maybe not right away. Okay, maybe not right away, but yeah, over time, I can kind of get this. It's like, where might my particular genius lie? Even if it's just a genius for being a good listener, or a genius for kind of organizing people and resources to get projects done, it's where's my particular genius? Okay? I'm going to add a little bit more to this picture in a second. Let me just stop here for a minute. I've drawn them with some overlap here, but I'd be curious. For you, are these two things the same? Are they different? How do they relate to you? What is it that you love doing? What is it that you're good at doing? Anybody? Bueller? Okay. Yeah.
They're very much the same.
Okay. Very much the same for you. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I find that what I'm good at, or they have a lot of aspects. So the things that I'm good at help motivate me to develop the things that I'm not good at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. So they have a lot of similar aspects, but for you, if maybe even if you're not as good at it, if you love doing it, it gives you the juice to work at it more. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know about for you. I'm going to tell you that you can kind of get a sense here. I'm sort of directing us toward the overlap space. But just to give you an example of how this plays out, in terms of things that you love doing and that you're good at doing, I'm going to draw a couple of things here. I'm going to put singing over here in that category for me. Okay, I love doing it, and I will not favor you with a tune this afternoon, okay, to your benefit. I'm going to put over here in the good at, but don't love it, I'm going to put math. Okay, I was actually pretty good at math in high school. Algebra 1, trigonometry, geometry, the proofs. Got into college, and some people were encouraging me, hey, you're good at math, maybe engineering, perhaps, okay? Something in the sciences, perhaps, okay? Calculus first semester calculus go through, pretty good order, had a little momentum built up. I got to second semester calculus, and I discovered for myself, you got to love math to do second semester calculus, okay? Okay. And I just didn't love it, okay? So I want to suggest to you that in terms of this good at sphere, okay, if you don't add the love piece, there's going to be a ceiling, okay? And you know the way our economy works, okay, a market economy, it actually works based on scarcity, okay? So you actually get paid more if you can do something that other people can't. Okay? So how do you get to be good enough at something? To be really distinctive at something, to be able to do something that other people can't? Well, you got to love it, okay? Because you're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to work at it. There's a terrific book and a whole line of thinking right now, but it's captured in a book called Talent is Overrated. Okay? It's the people who find what they love and what they're good at, and put their heads down and do it, that really thrive. Okay? Well, I'm going to add another question to this, okay? In addition to what is it that I love doing, what is it I'm good at doing, which are kind of internal questions. Right? The people I've seen most fulfilled, most fired up, okay, contributing more, are also asking a third question. In addition to what is it I love doing, what is it I'm good at doing, they're also looking at the world around themselves and asking the question, what is it that needs doing? Okay. Where is life broken in some respect? What's some cause or some group of people that could really use some help? What's some product or service that people really need, okay? What would be worth investing my life energies toward? Okay? What is it that really needs doing? And the people I've seen most fulfilled, most fired up, keep asking themselves these questions, okay? Not just once. It's not like a jigsaw puzzle that you figure out once and then you're done. We're dynamic beings. So we change over time. So the people I've seen most fired up, they keep these questions alive for themselves. And they're either finding or creating this sweet spot for themselves. Okay? This field of action where at least some of the time, not all the time, I have degrees of freedom in my work that most people don't have, but I can tell you, I'm not in the center of these three circles all the time, okay? I don't know anybody who is. Some of the time, we're going to be right here, we're good at it, and it needs doing, we don't really love it, okay? Some of the time, we're going to be down here, it needs doing. We're not any good at it, and we don't love doing it, but we got to do it. It needs doing, okay? That's the way it is. But I want to suggest to you that if you're not spending at least some of your time in this middle space, where you can say to yourself, yep, I love doing this. There are aspects of this that I really enjoy. And at least some of the time you're not able to say, yep, I bring something to the party here. I've got a skill or a capacity that makes a contribution here. And at least some of the time you're able to say, you know what, this is worth doing. This makes a difference. This contributes in some way. This meets some real needs. If you're not able to say that, at least some of the time, not able to say that I'm in this field of action at least some of the time, I want to suggest to you that life is going to feel kind of flat. Okay? And although P&G is a great, P&G is a great company. It really is. Terrible fit for me. But you might find yourself writing usage instructions on the back of laundry detergent boxes. Okay? First, sort your clothes. Okay? Women wept upon reading those instructions back then. Okay? I want to invite you to take seriously these questions as primary questions, okay, for your explorations over the rest of your time at school and beyond. Okay? There's other questions you could be asking yourself. I want to lift these, urge you to lift these up to the front of your own consciousness. All right. What I'd like to do is stop here and take any questions or comments or observations that might come up about this, any challenges, any yeah buts, and then do a couple of things before we close. So are there any questions or comments or observations about this or about my own experiences? I'd be happy to take on. Yeah.
If you're working within an organization that is highly value-driven, how do you bring that to bear on partnering organizations that have conflicting values or different values?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. With the way that we try to work with organizations is that we actually do internal interviewing to assess what the internal values are. But we also go out and we interview customers. And we try to get really clear on what the desired customers are valuing and need in the organization. And so what my perspective and Brandon and our perspective is that what most organizations do when they create a set of values is that it's too internally focused. They don't include the voice of the customer in it. And so our perspective in terms of getting employees enrolled or getting partnering firms enrolled is to say, look, it's not just us saying that these are important values. This is what our customers are saying they value from us. And in order for us to deliver on that for them, we have to organize ourselves and have to operate in a particular way. So you can actually make the business case for it if you take the time up front to create a set of guiding ideas that include the voice of the customer. Okay? Is that? Okay, great.
Yeah. How would you maximize the sweet spot as the leader of an organization? Because this is more individually based, right? So
That's
how
great.
how would you find out what your employees are good at, what they love, and what you need to get done in the organization?
That's a terrific question. The reason I got the gig at Synovus was because that little mini workshop I did where the chairman, CEO was at, and so forth, I presented this model. And I said, this is what we're teaching at Emory as part of the Center for Ethics there. And the chairman, a guy named Jimmy Blanchard, who in the Hall of Fame, in the pantheon of CEOs, I would include Jimmy Blanchard. He's a Georgia legend, and if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, take advantage of that. Jimmy Blanchard looks at me and says, that's what we want to do for our folks. Okay? We want to help more of our folks spend more of their time in the middle of this because it's going to actually unleash their energy and their passion and their creativity. And so what I actually did as part of the Leadership Institute was we taught this 3 circles framework to every manager and supervisor in the company. And the story one of the stories that I like the best is the story of a supervisor who had a new employee come into her unit. And this was the supervisor was just doing her typical thing, okay? And that was that she invited the employee into a conference room, drew these 3 circles up on a flip chart or whiteboard, and said, my job is to understand you well enough so that I can get you in this spot at least some of the time. And there's a story that I came to know of a woman who had been out of the workforce for 20 years, okay, and was now a temporary sort of fill-in receptionist, and really didn't think she had skills or abilities. She landed in this woman's unit and got marched into the conference room, and the woman said, this is my job here. And she said, and this is, if you're a manager, supervisor, this is the crux of it right here. Say, tell me about some project or activity, work-related or non-work-related, doesn't matter. Tell me about some project or activity that you get a lot of satisfaction from, or it's something that you've already done, maybe 3 years ago you did X. Tell me about that project or activity that really kind of fired you up. You really enjoyed it and got satisfaction from it. And so this woman proceeds to tell her about cooking. I like to cook. And then she asked the great sort of follow-up, and this is what you need to do if you're in this role, is to say, so tell me why you like cooking. Okay, there's a concept that says 5 levels of why. Just keep asking why. So why is it that that's so satisfying for you? And just peel the onion. And what she got to understand was it was actually doing researching recipes and actually kind of analyzing what sort of recipes would work with what dishes and so forth. So she got this kind of research sense from this woman. Make a long story short, this woman is now a business analyst at what was a sister company of Synovus called TSYS, where she did research on customer accounts and provided the fruits of that research to business development people and other folks in the organization. And she had a career. Okay? So it would be, tell me stories of projects or activities that have fired you up. And then I'm going to be sort of part detective as I listen to try to understand what is it that really is it? What is it really that gets you going? And then what you say as manager is you say, I can't promise you that you're going to be in here all the time, but I can promise you that I'm committed to this. I can promise you that we'll have regular conversations. And as you try some new things, I want to find out from you. So what do you love about this? Okay, or not love about it? And we'll stay in ongoing relationship so that you spend more of your time here than otherwise. Okay, is that? Okay. Yeah.
First off, sir, I'd just like to thank you for coming out here. I really enjoyed hearing you speak. I've actually been doing some reading about this topic. There's an author I've been reading named John Piper, and he discusses finding purpose and satisfaction. Piper goes one step further than you've gone, sir. He says that the common purpose of all humanity, every last one of us, is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And I'm curious to know if you've read Piper's works and what you think about them.
I've not read his work, and I can tell you that there are some companies that are explicitly oriented around that. And if you have a religious orientation or theological kind of bent, there are definitely places where that's actually an explicit part of their larger sense of purpose. In the domains that I work in, I typically don't use that language unless it's sort of invited and kind of welcomed or expected. But I can tell you that if you look at Chik-Fil-A, you're all familiar with Chik-Fil-A, closed on Sundays, okay, that Chick-fil-A's explicit purpose is to glorify God in everything that we do, be good resources or good stewards of our resources, and have a positive impact on everyone we come in contact with. So that includes the people who work there. So they have scholarships, and they have better training and better treatment of people who work there. That includes customers. So it's not universal. No company's perfect by any stretch. No company's perfect. But just pay attention when you go in Chick-fil-A, okay, and see what might be resonant or consistent with that kind of purpose. And for them, a core value is around family. So that's actually why, a big reason why they're not open on Sundays is because they want people to be able to spend that day with their families, okay? Their drive-through window is not open late at night because they want the teenagers to be able to be home at night, okay? When you go and you get the equivalent of the Happy Meal at Chick-fil-A, okay, and my partner and I did this once as a little test. We got the Happy Meal at Chick-fil-A, and we walked down the street and got the Happy Meal at McDonald's, okay? And Chick-fil-A, okay, they gave you a book to read with your child, okay? McDonald's, that particular day, gave us a little purple-haired troll, okay, that was a tie-in with whatever movie was out there. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying there's a different kind of orientation there. And you know, I think it connects with what I'm intuiting Piper writes about. Okay. Yeah.
I heard you mention servant leadership.
Yes.
I was wondering, could you describe how that might look in the workplace?
Yeah, one of the precepts of, core precepts of servant leadership, and if you're at all intrigued or interested in it, I would really direct you to the ILE, the Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship, where servant leadership is a core idea that they work with and teach. But one of the precepts that sort of is a kind of a walking stick for me has to do with meeting the highest priority needs of those that you would serve. And so one who takes a servant leadership posture is continually asking himself and asking the others around him, what do you really need? Okay? What would be helpful to you? Okay? What's important to you? Okay? And is intentionally trying to meet the highest priority needs in a way that helps that person or those people or that group grow. One of the sort of more simple kind of ways to think about it is you think about an organizational pyramid in a servant leadership organization. Instead of the pyramid sort of being like this with the CEO and top management up there, the pyramid is turned upside down. And there's the CEO and top management with an orientation of our job is to serve these folks who then serve our customers. Okay? That's sort of the conceptual underpinnings of a servant leadership organization. And one of the hallmarks of a servant leadership organization is that they do have a larger sense of purpose, because it really takes energy. It really takes energy to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to actually put others first. It takes a lot of energy to do that. It takes a lot of commitment to do that. And in order to sort of stay with it, if you don't have, and your organization doesn't have this larger sense of mission or purpose, why bother? Let's just be in it for ourselves. We'll all just make as much money as we can. Okay? So you see organizations, and this is one of our big things here. You see organizations that have sort of guiding ideas or mission or vision statements around being the preferred provider of XYZ services in our area. Well, who really cares? Okay. I see hospitals that have a mission statement. We want to be the preferred provider in XYZ part of Georgia or wherever. Well, who really cares? Okay? That you're going to have the biggest market share for hip replacements or heart surgeries. But on the other hand, there's hospitals that say our purpose and our vision is to have healthier communities. Now that's a vision. That's a sense of purpose I could get behind. And it's the kind of purpose that I've seen it time and time again. It draws out the best in others. It draws out the servant leadership capacities that someone might have. I know I'm getting last question, then I want to do a little wrap up. Yeah.
If you think you're doing something that you love doing, something that you're good at doing, something that needs doing, how do you motivate people to kind of share the same common goal that you have? How do you get them to kind of share your passion so you can actually get things done?
Yeah, so the question was how do you get people to share your passions? First response I would give to that is find out what theirs are. Okay, find out what their passions are, and then look for the overlaps. That one of the great services that you can do for other folks is to help them get clear on what matters to them. Help them get clear on their values, what's important to them. And if you can do that, then you can help them see how that connects with your sense of purpose. Maybe not 100%. But at least enough for them to be able to see, hey, I can get some of the juice that I want to get by investing in this larger sense of purpose that you have. Maybe, just maybe, you'll even sort of find a way to integrate their sense of purpose into it as well. Is that helpful? Okay. All right. I'm going to wrap up by sharing a word or two about a poem. Then I'm going to recite a poem, and then someone here is going to do a recitation, although they don't know it yet. Okay? So this poem that I want to talk about for a second, and I cannot recite it. I don't know the whole thing. It's called The Swan. It's by Rilke. But here's the central image of it. Okay? The central image of it is the contrast between the way a swan walks on dry land. You can imagine, sort of get that in your mind, sort of lumbering, sort of going from side, whoa, and then the other, whoa, okay? Okay. And then when it hits the water, what happens? Okay. Graceful, okay? And the idea of this poem that's suggested by this poem is that each of us needs to be in search of our own elemental waters. Okay? And that the search for those elemental waters can be enlivening, and then finding those elemental waters, finding that sweet spot, even if it's just for a time, okay, can also bring you alive. So here's a poem by Robert Frost that I can recite a part of it. It's called Two Tramps in Mud Time. And mud time is actually about this time in Vermont, springtime in Vermont, where things are thawing out. Okay? And it is, I'm from New England, those of you who may be familiar, it's muddy, okay, in large parts of the world up in New England. So here's Frost. He's out in the backyard, and he's chopping wood. And two homeless gentlemen, it's called Two Tramps in Mud Time, so tramps was the term they used. So two tramps come by and ask Frost if they could chop the wood for him and get paid for doing the chopping. Now, Frost loves to chop wood. And so the poem is this kind of working out of whether or not he's going to give them the axe. And at the end of the poem, we're really not sure, or it's not clear what he did. But what Frost does do is give us these lines that relate to our topic here today. So Frost says, "Yield who will to their separation. Yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation, as my two eyes make one in sight. Only where love and need are one, and work is play for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done, for heaven's and the future's sakes. Yield who will to their separation. My object in living is to unite my avocation and my vocation, as my two eyes make one in sight, only where love and need are one, and work is play, for mortal stakes, is the deed ever really done, for heaven's and the future's sakes." Okay, is somebody here near one of the bags of Famous Amos cookies? Anybody here got one of the bags? You got it back there? Okay, could we get a microphone back to this guy who's near the bag? Okay, would you be willing to stand up, please? Okay. If you got the bag there, that would be great.
I don't. He does.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well,
I'll take your place.
okay, yeah. If you would, if you could get the bag there, that'd be great. Could you give him the bag of cookies? Okay. Okay. What's your name? What's your name?
Dante.
Dante. Okay, thanks. Dante, on the back of the bag there's a little story about Wally Amos. If you could read that story and then pause when I ask you to pause, that'd be great.
All right. Can anyone hear me without a mic?
Why don't you use the mic? Be helpful.
Hello? All right, go on.
Great.
Originally, Wally Amos, a true cookie lover, baked cookies in his home to share with his friends.
Hang on a second. The man really loved making cookies. Okay? Go ahead, Dante.
In 1975, he perfected his special recipe to create the ultimate chocolate chip cookie.
Hang on just a sec. He got really good at making those cookies. Okay?
He then started his own company with a commitment to use only the best ingredients, like rich chocolate and flavorful nuts.
The man was true to his values. Okay?
Those homemade tasting cookies were so special that they got famous just by word of mouth.
Okay, you can stop, Dante. He discovered that people needed these chocolate chippers at parties and workshops just like this. So I know this is a cheesy way to end, okay? But I want to suggest to you that you have now actually ingested these ideas into your system, okay? And they're going to be with you for at least another couple of hours, okay? My going forward advice would be try lots of new things. Try lots of new things. Keep asking yourself those 3 circle questions. So keep reflecting on this. And there's some handouts that'll give you some other thoughts as well. But while you're at it, what the heck, keep eating Famous Amos cookies. So thanks for your time and attention.